How can God love me?
What is my purpose?
What happens after death?
Why do bad things keep happening to me?
Who is God?
In this segment of Ask GHCC, we're going to try to tackle the question of when is it appropriate for my child to start dating? And being a student ministries pastor, this is honestly one of the most common questions that comes to me from parents and students alike. And sometimes these questions are difficult to address because things like dating or driving a car or using the internet aren't explicitly addressed in Scripture. And so for things like this, we need to look at the whole counsel of Scripture and draw out the principles from Scripture in order to guide our action. And so because of that, I don't think there's a magic age or number for a child to start dating, because dating is largely a social construct that our society uses to discern appropriateness for marriage. But I do look at passages like 1 Corinthians 10:31, where the Apostle Paul writes that whether you eat or drink, whatever you do it all for the glory of God. And so to understand for a child, to help your child understand if this is a good time to start dating, I would simply ask the question, will this relationship glorify God? And there's certain things that will help guide the discernment process of glorifying God in a relationship. One is this relationship with an unbeliever? Because for a believer to date an unbeliever or to be in a close, intimate relationship with an unbeliever is something that Scripture explicitly says should not be happening, that we shouldn't be unequally yoked. And so for a student or a child to date an unbeliever for a student or child who is a believer to date an unbeliever, the relationship can't glorify God. And then in addition to that, I would also say that for a relationship to glorify God, it needs to have appropriate boundaries, whether it be physical, emotional, spiritual, or otherwise. Because relationships can often spiral down into overly physical or overly emotionally connected or spiritually without boundaries. And so for a relationship to glorify God, it needs to have good, solid boundaries with people around them to speak into their life and keep them accountable. And then another passage I look to is Hebrews 13:4, which basically talks about marriage being honored by all and the marriage bed not being defiled. And I would say that for a relationship to honor marriage and the marriage bed, it needs to not be overtly physical. And this is really connected to the boundaries thing, where the relationship, too often for young believers and teenagers, the relationship gets too physical too quickly. And the marriage, the relationship isn't honoring marriage. And so my goal and my hope in this is that in helping students to understand how dating fits into glorifying God and honoring marriage, that this ultimately gives their relationships purpose. Because I believe that dating relationships need to have ultimate purpose, which leads to marriage. And so for a high school freshman to begin dating without any direction or purpose leading towards marriage at that time, it just doesn't honestly make sense. And so my hope in this is that believers, young and old alike, would begin to see more and more that honestly this time of singleness without a dating relationship, without marriage happening quite yet, that this single time is a good time to be pursuing Christ and to be used by Him without distraction, without being focused on other things. And so my encouragement to families and parents is to have a conversation, to simply walk through these things with your child, to simply ask, will this relationship glorify God? And will it honor marriage? And to help them process when is a good time for them to start dating.